Saturday, my Fox and Friends weekend co-host Rachel Campos-Duffy and Pete Hegseth and I traveled out to Bedminster, New Jersey for the first interview of former President Donald Trump after his conviction in New York. 48 hours after he was convicted, we had a chance to sit down with him for something like 85 minutes. He was open. He was in good spirits. He was in a good mood. I keep searching for the right word. I wouldn't say peaceful. Certainly wasn't angry. I was going to ask him at one point, do you feel vengeful? And I didn't end up asking it. As I mentioned in yesterday's episode of the Will Cain podcast, it's a different interview, than you would experience here on this show. Because I'm here, when we do a long-form interview with somebody, I'm by myself. And I follow up. And I listen, and I'm curious. And I'm all those same things, but I have to defer as well. I have to be a part of it with three people. I have to, and I do feel very respectful of my co-hosts. And oftentimes, they will ask questions that I'm thinking, so I don't have to have my hands on the steering wheel. But it still changes the dynamic. It still changes the ability to pursue a linear line of questioning. But still, it was shocking, President Trump's mood, because I didn't have to ask him if he was angry. I didn't have to ask him if he was vengeful, because for 85 minutes I got to hear from him. They say he hit 9 birdies that day. Saturday said he played 25 holes of golf and hit 9 birdies. So he said, yeah, I am in a good mood. But my co-host Pete Hegseth asked him, are you worried about, going to jail? You worried about going to house arrest? And he said, no, I'm not worried. He said, in fact, I saw one of my people on TV saying, "Oh, that would be bad. That would be bad." And he said, "Don't beg. Don't say that. It is what it is. We'll do what we have to do." I don't know. His mindset was certainly remarkable. One of the moments from this interview that has received the largest amount of criticism, and particularly targeted at me, was when I intended to ask him how he would use the Justice Department. It's, I think, fairly well held, except for those in the firm anti-Trump, I would argue even captured by a 2016 Trump derangement syndrome mindset, that what we have seen in New York is a weaponization of the Department of Justice. Is lawfare? I mean, a CNN legal analyst writing in The Atlantic or in New York Magazine had written that never has this been done before. And a set of misdemeanors, which amounted to one crime, but charged up to 34 crimes, 34 instances because of 34 separate checks written. And by the way, the silliest commentary, for example, coming from a guy that I like, Colin Cowherd, Fox Sports, saying 34-0, in and of itself, like it's a scoreboard, like it's a game, not understanding exactly what's happening with the justice system. It's never happened that this has been charged up to a felony through federal election law that was passed on by the Federal Election Commission and the Southern District of New York, who has jurisdiction over federal law. Never had it been done, ever. And it leads to the question, well, what could happen in the future? Could a prosecutor in Wyoming or in deep red Texas decide, you know what, I'm going after Joe Biden? That has not been done in America. As Kevin O'Leary, Shark Tank's Kevin O'Leary said, no, because we're trying to protect the greater brand of the United States of America. And going after political opponents is a sign of a third world banana republic. So I wanted to ask Trump, where are you on this? In the past, you've talked about de-weaponizing the DOJ. Do you still feel that way? Do you think that you want retribution? Will you use the DOJ the same way, for example, has been done by Joe Biden? So I started with, you famously said, lock her up when it came to Hillary Clinton, but you didn't lock her up. And he interrupted me before I got to the part about how you will use the DOJ. And then he said this. You famously said regarding Hillary Clinton, lock her up. You declined to do that as president. But now,
and purposely, because after I won, it's different when you win. I see it tonight. I'm going to UFC with Dana White. And I see fighters, they come in with hatred like you wouldn't believe it. It's amazing. It's a little metaphor on life, right? The hatred, they hate each. Then after the fight, somebody wins, somebody loses. Sometimes they get knocked out. Sometimes but they hug and they kiss each other. It's like crazy. I beat her. It's easier when you win. And they all said, lock her up. And I felt, and I could have done it, But I felt it would have been a terrible thing. And then this happened to me. And so I may feel differently about it. I can't tell you, I'm not sure I can answer the question. Hillary Clinton, I didn't say lock her up, but the people would all say lock her up, lock her up. Okay. Then we won. And I said pretty openly, I say, all right, come on, just relax. Let's go. We're going to make our country great.
So in response to that, the criticism has been, he did say lock her up, and Will Cain didn't push back at all. And I would say to that, you're right. He did in the past say lock her up. It wasn't just crowds that said lock her up. He said lock her up. Here's an example of some of the criticism. This is from Instagram. You can follow us on Instagram, Will Cain Show, or see Will Cain, my personal Instagram. And this is what one commentator had to say on Instagram. Said from Ionitis Fitness, when Will was on First Take on ESPN, I respected that he stood up for his beliefs. I didn't always agree with him, but I respected him if he thought somebody was lying to his face. As soon as the president is lying to his face, I never said lock her up. Then he turns into a mute. No gumption. What happened to Will? Now, I will tell you, that comment, very reflective of a lot of comments out there. Like, how dare Will, sit there and let President Trump say that? And I just told you, he did say lock her up. And I didn't push back in that moment. And here's why. You're missing the forest for the trees. If I decide in that moment to bicker with him about whether or not he had ever uttered the words lock her up, and he did on many occasions, if I decide to bicker in that moment, this interview becomes no different from the how many different Caitlins work at NBC and MSNBC? I don't know, there's like half a dozen Caitlins, I think, at CNN or NBC. All those interviews devolve into an interview of nothingness, bickering over small things like this. And by the way, it is small. It's not true. That's right. But it is small. And let me explain to you why it's small. Because, A, he didn't lock her up. That is the point. It is so unimportant in that moment whether or not he admits to ever having said lock her up. The point is, he didn't lock her up. He didn't use the DOJ. And if you think Hillary Clinton has no crimes to be investigated, and by the way, if the best you can ever do with Donald Trump, sicking the federal government, the DOJ, several of which, like the Southern District of New York, chose not to go after him, and the Manhattan District Attorney's Office on a real estate developer in New York, and all you can come up with is some bookkeeping errors that you call fraud, let me explain to you this. He might be the cleanest real estate developer in New York. Might be the cleanest real estate developer in New York if that's all you can come up with. You put all those institutions on any real estate developer in New York, you're going to come up with more than bookkeeping ledgers. But the point is, he didn't lock her up. Now, by the way, some on the right are upset about that. They're upset. You said you'd do this. She's guilty of some of the same crimes they've now convicted Trump. She got away with a fine on calling, I believe, payment for the Steele dossier a legal expense as opposition research. She did virtually the exact same thing. And by the way, that is one. If you believe that Hillary Clinton has no crimes in her background, you are living in Never Never Land. Some people say, oh, he tried, but he couldn't find anything. Get out of here. Never Never Land. And he didn't lock her up. That's the point. That's the substantive point. That is what matters. Okay, so you have missed the forest for the trees. And I think for those that are caught up in this moment, you are really suffering from Trump derangement syndrome locked into 2016. What does it matter? Seriously, substantively, what does it matter what he did or did not say in 2016? What matters is, A, what he did through 16 through 20, and he didn't lock her up. And B, if you are concerned, if you're truly concerned about the verbal dynamics of locking someone up, why don't you listen to this clip one more time? Why don't you listen to the answer to the substantive point being made? I want to play that clip one more time to see if you can get beyond the points about Hillary Clinton and put your eyes through the windshield and not the rearview mirror. Listen. You famously said regarding Hillary Clinton, lock her up. You declined to do that as president. But now,
and purposely, because after I won, it's different when you win. I see it tonight. I'm going to UFC with Dana White. And I see fighters, they come in with hatred like you wouldn't believe it. It's amazing. It's a little metaphor on life, right? The hatred, they hate each. Then after the fight, somebody wins, somebody loses. Sometimes they get knocked out. Sometimes it's, but they hug and they kiss each other. It's like crazy. I beat her. It's easier when you win. And they all said lock her up. And I felt, and I could have done it, but I felt it would have been a terrible thing. And then this happened to me. And so I may feel differently about it. I can't tell you, I'm not sure I can answer the question. Hillary Clinton, I didn't say lock her up, but the people would all say lock her up, lock her up. Okay. Then we won. And I said pretty openly, I say, all right, come on, just relax. Let's go. We got to make our country great.
I don't know. I can't say. It's a tough question. I asked him, would you use the DOJ in the same way of Joe Biden? In the past, he said, I want to de-weaponize the Department of Justice. Now he's saying, I don't know. And that is the substantive point. That is what you should be paying attention. Now, there's those on the right that say, good, you should. There are others on the right, I know, these people as well, go, no, you got to be above it, and you've got to recorrect the justice system. You've got to de-weaponize it. Wherever you fall, whatever. I think there's actually an interesting debate to be had on both sides. Assurance of mutual destruction is what ends it, or trying to get rid of partisan hacks running the DOJ. But it doesn't. The point is, people like Keith Olbermann, I think I can call him a colleague because I do think we overlapped. I remember seeing him shuffle through the hallways with his little lap dog at times in the ESPN green room at South Street Seaport, tweeted the following in response to that. He said, imagine being we've got it blacked out. Imagine being a whore like Will Cain and letting this 5-dimensional gaslighting go by without even flinching. By the way, come on, two-a-days. What are we taking that word out? That's not one of the 5 dirty words, two-a-days. What are we doing here?
I was being conservative. I'm sorry. I'll let you say it.
It's not a Tea Party here. We're not. I mean, not the Republican Tea Party. It's not a. This isn't prim and proper. We're not on TV here. You can say it exactly as it is. I don't need to edit that language. Olbermann called me a whore. Okay. What I would say to Olbermann are, you're a single-cell amoeba capable of only single thoughts, elementary thoughts, caught in a 2016 insanity zone. He just told you, regardless of what he said in 16, he may do it in the future to Joe Biden. That seems to be the point that matters here. It's like I've been struggling to find the right metaphor. Your kid says, "Hey, daddy, we're going to the fair. Can we have ice cream?" You go, they don't have ice cream there. And by the way, it doesn't matter if they have it or not. You're not allowed to have ice cream. You can't. Why? Because I said so. And then you get to the fair and you see they're selling ice cream cones. Dad, you said they didn't have ice cream cones here. What does it matter that? I don't care. I told you, you can't have it because I said so. Like, what are you focused on this? I don't have a knife. And then I hold a knife to your throat. You said you didn't have a knife. Whatever I said doesn't seem to be the most important part of what's going down in this moment. You're just focused on whether or not he said lock her up. He's saying, in effect, I don't know. I may lock up Joe Biden. You can say that's right. You can say that's wrong. But that's what he's saying in that moment. It's true. I didn't follow up. I didn't bicker about that. Maybe I should have. And maybe there are times I would like to push back harder. I'd love a one-on-one interview with President Trump right here on the Will Cain Show. But if you really think this is some big moment, you are bumping your head against trees. You have no idea where you're going in the forest. None. There are other big moments I wanted to highlight in this interview. I thought another big moment was a conversation about deportations. He said he's going to deport illegal immigrants. Millions have come into the country. And I find, by the way, President Trump present. Okay, that's part of his. I think that's a real challenge in interviewing him. He's present. What I mean by that is, everybody thinks he, filibusters. No, other politicians filibuster to avoid answering a question in a calculated way. He just follows his thoughts wherever they're going, And what I find is he does have a pretty good ability to come back. So you ask a question. I think at one point I asked something about the DOJ. He starts. Then he starts going to foreign policy. Then he starts going. Next thing you know, we're talking about how many cars are parked in Afghanistan. And I'm like, where did this question begin? And then he does come back at the very end and somehow readdress. I don't know if he ties it in, but he readdresses the question. And so he said, on deportations, So being president, he always reacts to the question. Like when he brought up UFC, I don't think that's a planned answer. I'm going to UFC tonight, and these fighters, they're angry. So I asked him about, but can you really pull off deportations? This is what he had to say. How can you implement deportations, and do you think the public will have the appetite, the stomach for watching deportations on their television screen?
Well, the second part of that question is so great and so tough. Because, the radical left is going to start saying, oh, look, so you'll get rid of 10 really bad ones. And one, beautiful mother who they think is guilty of something, and maybe she is, maybe. And it'll become a story. Or a family that's a good family and came in wrong, and, they're going to show it. Then it's going to always be tough. It's not going to be easy. And we have to use a lot of good judgment. But the way you get rid of them is the local police. The local police know these people by their first name, their middle name, and their last name. The local police are great. They're just not allowed to do their job. They're afraid of losing their pension. They're afraid of losing their wife or husband. They're going to lose their house. They're losing everything. And one of the things I'm doing is giving local police immunity from prosecution. They get prosecuted. When they do their job, they get like your soldiers.
So the how there is I'm going to empower local police and reinforce immunity for them in enforcing the laws. The interesting part is, well, what about when they splay it all over television and AOC, dressed in all white, leans against a chain link fence? There was a time in America when deportations were kind of like, that's what happens if you're an illegal immigrant. You get deported. Cheech and Chong, La Migra, running away. Because that's kind of the point. Millions of people have come in. And by the way, some on Instagram, this is from Instagram as well, commented the following when it comes to deportations. M. Heinrich said, all you have to do is stop giving out free stuff and they will leave on their own. She's pointing out the incentive structure, the incentive mechanism. We talked about sanctuary cities in that interview as well. And Todd Martin, 387, said, it doesn't matter. They are illegals and bankrupting our system, our schools, our health care. And so one, get them out. We have our own to take care of and keep letting these people in. There isn't anything left for the people who worked and contributed into the system and paid taxes. Hey, Two-A-Days and Young Establishment James, you guys, or maybe it was Tinfoil Pat, text this morning. Guest hosting last week, Sean Duffy pointed out, I believe, right, guys, that these aren't all people just looking to, take advantage of the healthcare system. That these people are, a lot coming for other potentially much more nefarious reasons. Isn't that something that Sean pointed out Two-A-Days?
Yeah, he definitely did. He was talking about the same exact thing, right, James?
Yeah, I think President Trump pointed out in the interview too that he got a lot of folks from China, a lot of young folks. It looks like they're building an army here.
Yes. Military-aged men, people get pointed out. And then, by the way, how many are on the terrorist watch list or coming from terrorist-sponsored countries?
Nobody knows.
And what in the world are all these people from China coming? That is the oddest thing. I think Americans to some extent go, oh, okay, times are tough. They were, not as much. In El Salvador, okay, I'm leaving El Salvador to get a better life in America. What? You're crossing the Pacific, going through Mexico and coming up to the southern border? We played a clip from an illegal immigrant on Fox and Friends where one dude, I think he was from Turkey, was saying, this is sketchy. These guys coming across with me, I don't know who these dudes are. Like, you guys should check on them. Like, he's the illegal immigrant as well. And he's worried about the other illegal immigrants. This is such a big deal. And I'm afraid we won't even realize it until it's entirely too late. And then I wanted to share this one other moment. Rachel Campos Duffy pressed President Trump on the way she framed this is that people have lost trust in institutions. And the only way you're going to get trust back in institutions, whether it's the Justice Department or the intelligence agencies, is to begin to be transparent, to be open with them. And I was yesterday flying from New York back to Dallas, and I was on our Facebook chat. The Facebook and YouTube chat's super active yesterday. And I saw some people saying President Trump really backed off when it came to Epstein. But listen to this when she asks him about declassifying various secrets.
So if you were president, would you declassify, you can answer yes or no to these.
Yeah.
Would you declassify the 9/11 files?
Yeah.
Would you declassify JFK files?
Yeah.
Would you,
I did a lot of it.
Would you declassify the Epstein files?
Yeah, I would.
All right.
I guess I would. I think that less so because, you don't know. You don't want to affect people's lives if it's phony stuff in there because there's a lot of phony stuff
Yeah.
with that whole world. But I think I would, or at least
And do you think that would restore trust? Help restore trust?
Yeah, I don't know about Epstein so much as I do the others. Certainly about the way he died. It would be interesting to find
Sure.
out what happened there because that was a weird situation and the cameras didn't happen to be working, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, I'd go a long way toward that one. The other stuff I would definitely do the January 6th because,
Yeah. Yes,
beyond
so
all of
important.
them, because what happened, how about the Unselect Committee? They had meetings, they had all Democrats and 2 failed Republicans, right? Cheney and crying Adam Kinzinger.
Well, everybody pointed out, whoa, and again, I think this is stream of consciousness. I think this is answering in the moment. Kind of backs off from Epstein. And people are like, oh, there's pictures of Trump with Epstein, whatever. There's other stuff, too, about Epstein. And we've talked about it here on the show. Like, was he an asset? Was he a Mossad asset? What was the point in all of this? So, I would love to hear the truth behind what was going on with Jeffrey Epstein. I also think it's incredibly tentacled and deep. I thought that was a fascinating moment from the interview with Donald Trump.